especially in today's world when it's become so clear and so obvious in the message of the music industry that more and more young people are like thinking, oh, I know what they're into, and now I want to sell my soul, and now I want to do this because I've seen the music videos where they're doing all this crazy ritualistic stuff. So they're making it more apparent and more obvious.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Gareth tonight. In a break from our normal format, I'm going to be sitting down with one guest for a long form interview. Tonight I'm joined by Coco Sianne Ryder. Coco is about as genetically connected to the UK music industry as you can get. Her grandfather is Scottish singer Donovan, her father is Shaun Ryder of the Happy Mondays, and her uncle is the son of Rolling Stones founding member Brian Jones. Her family also connects into Freemasonry and the British royal family, which has led her to delve deep into the connections between the elite bloodlines and the music industry. It promises to be a fascinating conversation. Coco, thank you so much for joining us. What was it like growing up, you know, not only connected to one legendary music icon, but essentially three?
Yeah, three. Definitely interesting. Definitely had a unique life, a strange life. I traveled a lot, changed school a lot, changed country a lot, and changed house a lot. I didn't have such a crazy life like how my mother and her siblings did. Growing up really in the entertainment sphere and on the music industry scene and stuff like that. So I had a more safe and isolated life growing up in the countryside of Spain and Ireland and stuff like that. I did have some strange exposure when I lived in LA for a couple of years as a kid. No, it was in general very interesting, surrounded by a lot of creativity and music.
I wondered about that. What was your childhood like in that sense then? Was it just, because I can just imagine just like people just sat around, guitars everywhere and like you say, all this creativity everywhere.
I think that was more my mother's experience when her parents, Linda and Donovan, were living in California in the desert, and they used to have a lot of artists around, a lot of people around, and they used to just throw parties all the time. And for me, it was more like my grandfather was the one in the house playing music around the fire and stuff like that. It was more to do with family and more close and intimate rather than just having a lot of crazy people around and a lot of artists around. So the creativity really just came from my immediate family rather than being immersed into the music world.
Because you became an artist, didn't you? As in not a music artist, but a painter. And I think you put on an exhibition with your grandfather Donovan. Was that your kind of way, I guess, of being connected to artistic ancestors? Even if it's not in the same way as in playing in bands or whatever, it's still part of it, isn't it?
Well, I was always very creative. I never had any idea of becoming an artist, but everyone kind of assumed that I would, and I was kind of directed in that direction to follow in the sort of family footsteps. But I wanted to study psychology, and I still do, and I think I'll get there eventually. But I'm definitely a very creative person, but in a lot of different ways, not just painting and drawing and sculpture, but performance and writing and things like that. So it's only now in the last few years I started to really figure out who I am and what I want to do and which direction I want to go in. Because when you have all of that, that pressure of the success of your family behind you, it can kind of make things a little fuzzy.
Yeah, I guess it creates a pressure as well. Did you ever feel that, that maybe you couldn't essentially really be yourself because you were always tied into this, well, she's going to be a musician or whatever?
Well, I did feel as though I had to be a success in some way or another. I did feel that. It wasn't really a pressure. It was just something that was like, had to be done, And so I came here to Florence with the idea of making a successful career as an artist. And well, I've kind of, especially since, the lockdowns and the whole world went insane, I kind of have dismantled the whole direction that I was going in, and trying to rebuild myself, and thinking, do I really want to be a part of a system that that is going in this really insane direction? And do I really want to be an artist for this particular system? You know, what do I really want to give? What do I want to offer to the world? So, yeah.
I get that. I think to be honest with you, like, not even just people that are artists, but people in general over the last probably 5 years have had that same conversation with themselves. Like, what really am I doing? Because I've been doing something for 20, 30, 40, 50, however many years, and suddenly I realised that the world I thought I was in isn't that world.
Yeah.
It
It
seems
isn't that
weird to
world.
then
We're all
go straight back to
collectively,
it. Yeah.
yeah, we're collectively having that experience, a lot of us, at least 20% of us, I'd say. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
When did you start to realise, in terms of, obviously, with the whole COVID lockdown and the world going mad, it's still mad, isn't it? But that obviously opened your eyes in a different way. But in terms of the music, and I guess, you know, Hollywood, just the arts in general, when did you start to realise that maybe there were some dark undertones to that industry?
I always knew of the dark undertones because my mother always told me all of the crazy stories about how she grew up. And there's a lot of, you know, a lot of mental illness and a lot of sick and sort of perverted individuals that are within these spheres of entertainment. So I always knew about that ever since I was a young child, which is why my mother tried to keep me safe from all of that. But I kind of, when I was like 14, 15, I started listening to System of a Down, which they used to sing about how the system was fucked, basically. And that's when I first developed my mistrust for the system as a whole, when I was 14. And then when I was around 16, 17, I started reading a lot of esoteric literature and getting pretty deep into conspiracy theories. And this was back when the internet was still useful and you could find a lot of very interesting information. So I really had access to all of the things you could think of when it comes to conspiracy theories. I was reading all of it. And it wasn't really until a couple of years later that it started to spill into my own life, and I started to make connections about my own experiences and my family's experiences.
What kind of experiences were these? And I agree with you, by the way, how the internet used to be. Mate, you could go down rabbit holes left, right, and centre, couldn't you? But yeah, it's not the same anymore. But what were your family
Definitely.
experiences then that you thought, oh, hang on, I think that might have happened to me?
Well, okay, before anything happening to me, number one, there's my uncle's father, so Donovan's adopted son, which is Julian Jones's father, Brian Jones, the founder of the Rolling Stones. So he was a part of the 27th Club. And so I went down that rabbit hole of the 27th Club. And is it ritual sacrifice? Is it coincidence? Is it to do with making money off of these individuals for the rest of their life? So there was that. I knew that my family was tied into the things just because of our connection to Brian Jones and the Rolling Stones and the strange things that happened there. And also my grandparents have always insisted that he was murdered, that it wasn't an accident. But they never really went in the direction of why or what really happened. But they always felt that it wasn't what they said it was officially. So there's that. And then, obviously, I do have some very early memories of when I was living in Los Angeles that, well, I always interpreted as dreams because I didn't think that they could possibly be real, even though I remembered them as actual memories. And when I was reading about things to do with monarch mind control and MKULTRA, it's like I was reading directly what I had seen, bits and pieces of what I had seen as a child. And so that was really the beginning of the rabbit hole when I made that connection.
What are your thoughts on the 27 Club? Like your personal thoughts? 'Cause obviously, I know there's lots of theories, but you know, I've always found it strange. Like, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Kurt Cobain. That was mine. Like growing up, I had the long bleached hair and all the, you know, eyeliner and nail varnish, the lot. I loved that guy, and I was always, you know, I'm of the opinion now that I think he was murdered. I think Kurt Cobain was murdered, and I think that's something that's
Yeah.
becoming a bit more mainstream, isn't it? But
Yeah.
what do you think it's about? Because it is a coincidence, because the number of them is crazy, isn't it? It's an awful lot
Yeah.
of them now.
Yeah. I think that there's a spiritual aspect, in the sense that I think at the age of 27, we go through a huge change. And I think that each of these people were going through a very big change in their life. I think that Brian Jones, not only did they want to kick him out of the band, but he wanted to form a band with Jimi Hendrix, and they wanted to form a supergroup. Kurt Cobain, it said that his so-called suicide letter was actually a letter written about a resignation from the band. And then Amy Winehouse, you know, I don't think that she was going to get any better or heal. I think that she was going down a pretty dark road. And I think that the people within the music industry, and the people within the intelligence agencies who are connected to the music industry, who are all into the occult, they understand these things, and they have their astrologers, obviously, and they can understand the right moments to make things happen. But they understood that this age was an important age. They understood that they were going to make these large decisions that could alter, could impact the record companies. And I think that it's partly ritualistic and spiritual, about taking the energy of the individual, but it's also partly about money and power. So if these people that were either killing themselves because of drugs, or either going to leave the band for other reasons, that the power that the band had at the moment and the direction that it was going into would have decreased. And they don't want to let that power go. So if they kill the frontman or the face or the power of the band, then basically they can keep that energy that's happening then and there alive forever. So they can keep Amy Winehouse's legacy as strong as it was forever, and continue to profit off of that, and then energetically continue to reap the benefits spiritually off of her continued presence and power in the world. So that's my opinion on that.
I think you're right. I think, you know, it's quite common knowledge, isn't it, really, that no one sells more records than a dead rock star, essentially. And I suppose you could apply it even to obviously being an artist, someone like Van Gogh, who, as I understand it, didn't sell a painting, or maybe sold a handful of paintings until he died, and then suddenly, you know, he's one of the most famous artists of all time. So
Yeah.
someone's
Yeah.
made a lot of money off the back of him, and he you know, died
Yeah.
penniless.
Yeah.
This connection to, you know, secret societies, in that it infiltrates, as you said, the music industry, it infiltrates Hollywood and the film industry as well. Do you think it's the same group of people that are kind of, you know, infiltrating music, Hollywood, art, whatever, or whether there's kind of almost specific groups that attach themselves to different industries?
Well, it's a network. It's a vast network. It's a vast criminal network, and there are different cults and different groups of people and different secret societies and different fraternities all across the world. And they've all got each other's number, in a way. And that's how networks work, and they do favors for each other. So you need someone for a specific purpose in another country. You call a friend who knows a friend who knows a friend, and then basically you can carry out the things that you need to carry out for your occult purposes. But it's not just the occult, is it? It's military, it's the intelligence agencies, it's about money and power and the various institutions and corporations involved. And many of them are in to the occult. And perhaps there are specific groups within Hollywood that are at the head of it all, let's say. But I would say it's a bit more organic than that, that there's a multitude of different groups with different ideas and purposes that are all connected.
When I heard the police sirens then keep going and going, I was thinking there's going to be a knock on your door in a minute for talking about this. You hear the term a lot, actually, the term "they sold their soul."
Yeah.
I suppose in lots of different aspects, but particularly when it comes to people that make it massively famous, huge A-list household names. Is that literally, do you think, what some of these big stars do? And do you think it means almost in a literal sense, or whether, selling your soul is just a figure of speech?
Well, this is a very interesting point. And this is kind of the direction I wanted to go in, and kind of what I want to talk about, not just in this interview, but for the rest of my life. I'd like to talk about the actual magic and what these people believe. And well, I believe in it also because I have experienced it myself, and I probably wouldn't believe in it if I didn't. So let's say some of these artists believe that they sold their soul, and some of them don't. But depending on which person it is and what kind of power or energy that they have and what kind of influence they can have over the masses, these occult groups put them through various ceremonies and rituals, and they have people that go into sort of trances and these kind of Gnostic meditations, and let's say where they do various exercises of imagination, where they connect to the body, the mental body, the physical body, and the spiritual body of the person. And they put them through various phases of degradation of the spiritual body, the spiritual senses, and the protective barriers and layers around the body. And they do this so that they can basically occultly enter into your mind and your heart, so they can have more control over you. And now this is the part that not a lot of people are going to believe, but these people believe it. And so when someone has sold their soul, often they're put through this process without their knowledge, and they don't really understand what's happening. But these people will surround them, and they'll do all this kind of street theater and all these kinds of symbols, and they'll say these things to them so that subconsciously something inside them, deep inside them, knows what's happening. But consciously, in the real world, they don't know what's happening. Most of them don't know what's happening. But yeah.
Do you believe some of the big names, probably, some of the big people do know what's happening? Because I'm just thinking in terms of, obviously, the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger, I remember hearing from people before who had first-hand experience where they'd say that Mick Jagger basically walks into the dressing room, essentially a man in his 80s, and he walks out a different, like he goes and does some ritual, they don't know what it is, he walks out and it's the guy that you see prancing around the stage who's a completely different character. Do you think he would know what he's doing then?
Well, I do think Mick is definitely into some very dark ritualistic stuff. I think some of them are definitely into it, but you can't expect every artist or entertainer to be into the occult or even believe in the occult. But that doesn't mean they don't have occult power that the occultists can utilize and harness. Some of them are definitely into it. And I would say that especially in today's world, when it's become so clear and so obvious in the message of the music industry, that more and more young people are like thinking, oh, I know what they're into, and now I want to sell my soul, and now I want to do this because I've seen the music videos where they're doing all this crazy ritualistic stuff. So they're making it more apparent and more obvious. And this is why a lot more of the young entertainers and artists are not very interesting people. They don't have the same spark that the people had in the past, because these people are going into it like, yeah, I want to sell my soul to the devil and I want to be a part of this stuff so I can have all of the riches. But in the past, it was more like the people within the industry were seeking out special individuals who had a special light or who were born under a certain astrological position that gives them power to influence millions of people with just their voice. So
That's interesting, because I think in terms of someone like, well, I guess Taylor Swift now is the one, isn't it? Who is just a behemoth. I don't remember, I can't think of someone else really at the moment that is at her level in terms of size that can just sell out, multiple nights at football stadiums like Wembley Stadium, 30 nights, like it's insane numbers of people.
yeah.
What do you believe the goal is of all of this? Why do you think the dark arts are so interested in essentially taking over someone like, whether it be Mick Jagger or Taylor Swift? Are they just using them, do you think, as a conduit to essentially get to the real target, which is me and you, our kids and future generations?
Yeah, that's it basically. I think really though, at the very essence of it, people want meaning in their life. And it gives people meaning to be a part of this vast conspiracy and do these terrible things. And then, of course, you have people who are part of these bloodlines and they grow up in situations that are really awful and they experience trauma-based mind control and they experience all these horrible things and they don't really have much of a choice in the direction that they went, But in general, I think people who join these groups and these occult groups and get involved in these criminal networks, people really want meaning in their life. They want to feel important. They want to feel special. And that's why there's so many of these TV series and movies coming out these days about joining a secret society or becoming a special agent, and makes them, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'd like you to do these things for me, I'd like you to be a part of our secret little group and do these things for me, it makes people feel special, gives them meaning. But yes, you said something interesting about eventually how all of this is to gain control and power over the rest of the world. It's like with the monarch mind control and MKULTRA programs, everything that they do to their targets and the individuals that are in their immediate life, they eventually do on the rest of the world. And that's what the COVID lockdowns were. It was essentially MKUltra mind control done on a mass scale. And they use artists, they use their voice, they use their image, they use their music, they use film to basically lead the human race down the path that they want them to go down.
Well, they really did that through COVID. I must admit, like I was so disappointed with so many of the people that I'd grown up listening to, like musicians, that I thought in my infinite naivety were kind of anti-establishment in some way, whether it be, Dave Grohl or Eddie Vedder or whoever else, that then was coming out and pushing the lockdowns and COVID passes for gigs and mandatory. And I was just like, oh, mate. But what saved me, as bizarre as it is that I also grew up, obviously, around football with my dad and playing football myself. The footballers were great. And it was really strange because, we see these artists as very intelligent, poetic, anti-establishment, full of empathy. And we see sportsmen and women as basically idiots that have got quite good physiques that can lift stuff and kick stuff. But actually, in the end, they were the ones that spoke out. It's strange, isn't it? Maybe they didn't focus enough mind control on the sportsmen and women.
Well, they have a different kind of intuition, don't they? And a lot of the people in the entertainment industry, well, they have a lot of mental illness. And yes, they're interesting and they're anti-establishment and they're anti-power, but they also have been kind of tricked into believing that that they've won, that now these new politicians, they represent them, and they're part of this new wave of anti-establishment, of changing the world. They want to believe that they've won the fight, that after all the things with the 60s, and that finally there are people on their side, like, I can't even think, like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and they want to think, oh, things are happening, things are changing. She's a woman and he's anti-establishment, and they're on our side. So they've been tricked into believing that the COVID lockdowns were necessary for protecting and helping people, because there's no way that the billionaire class would want to put the world into lockdowns if they weren't terrified of the virus. I mean, they're easily influenced and manipulated people, and it's rather sad, actually.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It kind of, and then that then in turn gaslights their supporters, fans, whatever better word, into believing in the political pantomime again, doesn't it? I mean, I remember that with Russell Brand. Like, Russell Brand was always seen as anti-establishment. He suddenly then went and endorsed Ed Miliband out of nowhere, and it was kind of, I remember thinking at the time, like, what? Since when do anti-establishment people endorse the establishment?
Well, if they believe that that person is anti-establishment, that's the thing. That's why we have this polarization of the left and the right, because one believes their side is anti-establishment and the other believes their side is anti-establishment. One believes the other side's a bunch of pedos and one believes the other side's a bunch of pedos.
Yeah.
They've basically been tricked into believing these two different polarized points of view. And the people that believe these things, they're good people and they want to believe in something. They're not bad people. They've just been fooled. And, I was a little bit fooled as well, especially when I saw, Trump almost get assassinated. I thought, well, he must be doing something to piss someone off. But then, anything's possible. Maybe that wasn't even real. Who knows what's real anymore?
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're very much aware of the growing surveillance state emerging all around us. Whatever you do, you're being watched and your data being harvested. This is why Glenn and Eric Mader formed the Privacy Academy. Join the community designed to help overwhelmed, non-techie people like me learn how to get private online. Head over to privacyacademy.com/Ike and learn how to exit the surveillance state with regular webinars exclusively for you. Now, back to the show. Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, when I cut myself, I wish it heals as well as his ear heals from a bullet, that's for sure. It's funny, like, we look at different eras in music and whatever, like you mentioned the 60s and flower power and that kind of stuff, and then I suppose you've got the 70s and the punk movement. For me, like, the 90s always felt like that was quite a good era, actually. And maybe again I'm being naive because I was into 90s bands and stuff like that. But did you hear anything in terms of the kind of nefarious stuff around, like from your father, for instance? Obviously the Happy Mondays were, a big band in Britain in the 90s. So sort of British music in the 90s felt like it was just like normal people, but I might be completely wrong on that.
No, it was pretty normal. All of the weird, freaky stuff is when you go deeper into the people behind the record companies, the people behind the BBC, the people in the intelligence agencies. That's always been weird, but it's always behind kind of closed doors. And then, they push certain music at certain times for certain outcomes. Like in the 60s, they had the flower power movement, and that was coming naturally anyway. An astrologer could tell you that was coming naturally, that movement of free love. And then the intelligence agencies, they know that this is going to happen, and they hijack it. They hijack it so that they can utilize it for their own benefit. And I guess whatever waves and movements were happening in the 90s, they were hijacking that too. I mean, 90s was when really the politically correct thing was coming about. And it was all in sort of preparation for what's going on now, I suppose. And maybe in the 90s in the UK, the rave scene with ecstasy, I mean, maybe that had something to do with the criminal organizations that were selling drugs, and they wanted to just sell drugs. So, but my father, I think a lot of those people were just fucking crazy artists that just wanted to party and make music, and there wasn't really much going on there. Not like in my grandfather's time, where he was really surrounded by a lot of occultists, and a lot of very strange things were going on.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
hear that, don't you, about the 60s and, you know, Jim Morrison and that whole kind of connection to the CIA and all that stuff. And I think that was probably maybe going on in the 90s as well, actually, particularly in America. Because I think about it now, like, see, I grew up loving Kurt Cobain, loving Nirvana. And I remember there being a quote about Kurt Cobain was the guy that told American kids, basically teenagers, he told them how unhappy they were. Like, they didn't even realize. And it's like, then I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, well, there's a balance there, isn't there? Because they probably want artists to make people feel rubbish and sad, because that's good.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, they don't want them to feel too rubbish and sad to the point where they go, hang on a minute, I'm not having this. And then you get a real revolution. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean, also, you could say that in the 90s, there was a bit of a problem with heroin, and grunge culture kind of promoted heroin. And with each wave of a musical genre, there comes a kind of drug culture with that. And then, of course, the drugs are coming from the criminal networks, and the criminal networks are connected to the government, and the government's connected to the occultists, and it's all really connected. So maybe I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all. Sorry, the screen went a bit funny then, but it's all connected to the government, which kind of makes me laugh then, because then you've got these anti-establishment punk rock guys, you know, sticking two fingers up to the establishment whilst buying drugs from them, which I guess when you think about it like that is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
In terms of, obviously, as someone that's sort of looked at mind control, both in, you know, studying it and stuff like that, but also, you know, you've had your own experiences with your family and with the music industry. Could you tell now, do you think? You know, say if you put on the TV or if you turned up at an awards dinner, you could tell who's sold their soul, who kind of knows what's going on, or who is maybe under a spell, but deep down is probably a nice guy or a nice lady.
Well, I can definitely tell, because I have some pretty strong intuitive abilities. I can see it very clearly, and probably because I spent the last 10 years of my life going through the motions with these people and the things that they do to people, and I've learned a lot, and I've learned to recognize a lot and trust my intuition. So it's not just people who've sold their souls and things like that who are under occult influences, but there's also the mind control, which are two different things, and they go together, but they're two different things. The mind control is about the subconscious. It's about images and symbolism and frequencies and different kinds of technologies and machines that they can use to influence the way that you think and what you say and what you do. And then obviously they have different methods with like trauma-based mind control, where they put you through various traumas, and they can control you through that, through loss of memory and things like that. And then you have the occult side, where whether or not you believe in it, where they have a spiritual control over the individual, and they're harvesting the individual's energy, and that they've attached a lot of, let's say, quote unquote, demonic entities and artificial entities to the people. And I can definitely spot it, for sure. And you mentioned Taylor Swift earlier. It's funny. My sort of uncle, he's an astrologer, and he's an astrologer who specializes in criminal minds, criminal activity, and mental illness. And he has said, from viewing Taylor Swift's astrology chart, that she is straight up psychopath. 100%
Really?
psycho. Yes. Yeah, which, when he told me that, now when I see her in a completely different way that most people probably see her.
I guess that's part of, there's probably two routes to the top, isn't there? I guess that one, you can be, I guess, a vessel that they use to promote what they want. And then the other way to the top, I guess, is, being a psycho, basically.
Yeah, being a psychopath and being basically just a part of their perverted path, So
Your family, I mean, obviously it's incredibly connected in terms of the artist, the music aspect of it. It also has connections into Freemasonry and even the British royal family. What are those connections?
Well, my grandfather's father, Donovan's father, was a Freemason. And he grew up listening to my great-grandfather tell him a lot of stories, esoteric things, which greatly influenced his direction in life and in music. And then on my grandmother's side, so Donovan's wife, her family, I think, was her grandparents. Yeah, her grandparents worked for the British royal family. They worked on the gardens in Windsor, on the Queen's Gardens. And then on the great-great-grandparents who married into that family in Windsor, they actually came over on the boat from Lithuania with Russian royal family, but they were gypsies. So they were on a boat with Russian royals, but they were gypsies. So we're not really sure how a gypsy married into people who work for the British royal family, and they were on a boat with Russian royals. So there's probably a lot there that we don't know about.
No, that's another rabbit hole then that you can go
Yeah.
down. Because there's so much in
So-
there in terms of the Russian royal family and the Bolshevik revolution and all that stuff is, because we were never, I don't know about you, but I was never taught that in school. It was all just, you learned about the Nazis. No one ever spoke about the Bolsheviks at all.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of history we're missing.
Absolutely.
And so my grandfather with the whole Freemason thing, well, if you have a Freemason in your immediate family, there's always going to be something strange going on. I don't think it's a coincidence that he was discovered on the street when he was 16 and then put on television and suddenly became one of the most famous people on the planet. I don't think it's a coincidence that his father was a Freemason.
Have you ever spoke to your grandfather about this and had these conversations?
I try, but they have their worldview and their view about things and that makes the world seem nicer. They're very spiritual people and they have a certain perspective. And if you try to talk to them about things that are too dark, they shut off. They're not open to it, which is perfectly fine. Maybe it's a defense that they need.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
But
I know people like that. Same. Yeah.
I have certainly seen these people, part of the network, manipulate my grandparents a lot.
Really? In what way? In terms of what, back catalogue, financial or?
Well, financially, yes. I won't go into it deep, but let's say record companies and things like that, they're very manipulative. But then the people that will surround him, people that will work for him, even just at bars or events, people will show up and there will be a lot of very strange and odd things happening around them. And it's, let's say, mind control stuff. When you have groups of people showing up and saying and doing strange things around you and saying trigger words and things like that to direct you and lead you into a certain direction. I think a lot of it has to do with possibly disconnecting people from reality, so they're easier to manipulate and control. And I think a lot of it just has to do with this sort of egomaniac, perverse network that it's just nonstop working all the time to target individuals. It's just constant. And the people involved, I don't even think they realize how banal and useless their involvement really is and what it is they're actually doing. But yeah, it's definitely, I've seen things happen to my grandfather. People behave certain ways to my grandfather that just chilled me to the bone, that were scary even.
Really? Do you think
Yeah.
they seek to isolate people, you know, like your grandfather and other musicians as well? You know, because you said obviously your upbringing with your mum, like your mum took you away from that kind of stuff and tried to give you a normal upbringing, if a normal upbringing is even a thing. But do you think they kind of, if they want to control someone, you know, take away the people that they would trust, essentially, you know, like...
Yes.
I'm my own person, but I will listen to family members, or I would listen to close friends, but if they're not there, I'm much more suggestible, aren't I?
They'll plant people in their life that are constantly whispering in their ear and influencing their direction, which often will, that direction is to push away the people that actually love and respect you and surround yourself with people that don't love you and don't respect you, but just want to kiss your ass and tell you whatever you want to hear. So they do have people that are influencing them in that direction towards isolation, for sure. Also, there are people within my family, whereas if we did have a good upbringing and we did have access to certain things, we could make a real difference. You know, we could really help a lot of people. And the people around us, well, they wouldn't want that at all. So they made it their mission to send our family into as much chaos as possible. And that's basically what they do. They're just generating as much chaos as possible in as many people's lives as they possibly can.
Yeah, well, order out of chaos, it makes complete sense when you think about it like that. What's your take on, because I've always been interested, I mean, I've interviewed a couple of people on this, and one was relatively convincing and the other one wasn't, so it didn't really help me, but in terms of, you know, back in the 60s, they would say, you know, you could play songs backwards, like LPs backwards, and it would say all this kind of satanic stuff. Is that anything you've ever heard of or experienced yourself, you know, with people that were around that era?
No, not really. I would say that if they're putting subconscious messages in the music, it would be done in a way that you couldn't figure it out. Not so you can
Just
reverse the CD or the vinyl and hear the message. I would say that it would be pretty much foolproof, because if you can unravel and see and find the trick, the subliminal message, then it's not going to work. So if there is a subliminal message, we're not going to know about it.
No, of course not. What's your take? I'm just picking your brain now. What's your take on the Charles Manson stuff? Because I remember, you know, you had Charles Manson and the Manson family and the killing and all this kind of, you know, dark stuff that was going on. But I remember in a previous life, I was a radio DJ, a local radio station on the Isle of Wight. And I heard this song one day, and it was a beautiful song. It was an old, you know, American sort of country song, and it was beautiful. And then I found out it was Charles Manson when he was young. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I don't even care. So I played it on the radio anyway, introduced it as this is Charles Manson, got all kinds of ear-roll grief for it. But I always wondered about him and you know, whether he was, you know, got at by the establishment and mind controlled, or whether he was a total psycho. It's
the way that he talks, that kind of psychobabble shit that he does, it's like 100% MKUltra brain.
Right.
I've seen it. I've seen people who have been under mind control for many years, and I see when they go into panic or distress, they all have this same way of talking, and they have the same kind of look in their eyes and the same awkward facial expressions and movements, and it's 100% that's mind control, 100% MKUltra monarch, trauma-based mind control stuff going on. My grandmother was actually friends with who was it? Is it Sharon Tate who died?
Yeah, Sharon Tate. Yeah.
My grandparents were friends with her.
Wow.
So that's actually close to the family. It's a very strange thing to say that these things are close to the family. I actually lived in Laurel Canyon as well. when I was 6 years old. So
Wow. Did you see anything
yeah.
when you were there? I mean, well, it's hard. You're trying to remember when you were, six, of course.
I'm pretty sure some things happened to me when I was there in Laurel Canyon. I had these sort of dreams that didn't seem like dreams, where in the night I was taken from my room down the road to another person's house. And it seemed like a dream, but not really a dream. Perhaps it could have been an outer body experience, or I could have been under the influence of drugs or something. But I definitely remember something like that. And around the same time, because I was only in LA for like 2 years of my life, say between the age of 5 and 6, somewhere between 5 and 7, it was about 2 years. So Laurel Canyon is known for Jared Leto's house. You know about Jared Leto's house. He bought a house there that was once a secret underground facility for Hollywood to film propaganda films with the CIA.
Right.
And he bought that house because he found it fascinating. And you can actually see pictures of the underground, the basement that they used to do these films. And a lot of them are not just propaganda films, but they're films that no one's ever seen because they had specific purposes, like perhaps mind control purposes for soldiers and things like that. And it's a huge underground space. And I have memories of being in these huge underground spaces. I'm sure it's not the Jared Leto house. I'm sure they have plenty of other spaces. I mean, it is the Hollywood world, so they have a lot of movie sets and movie props and things around, which are very useful if you want to do mind control on somebody.
This psychobabble, as you call it, have you seen that, outside of the music industry, say in a, a political setting? Because I'm thinking now, like, I've heard Donald Trump, kind of bumble through words like kafefe or whatever that word was that he said, and Joe Biden was, all over the place.
Biden was constant. Biden was
Yeah.
constant. Trump is much more lucid than Biden, that's for sure. But I have seen it. I grew up on an island that was full of. It's full of very powerful individuals, a lot of politicians, a lot of criminals, and a lot of very influential people. And it's a small island, and it's an island with, I think, 7 Masonic lodges, which is insane because it's just a small fucking island. So yes, I have seen these things done to what you would consider maybe normal people, but who have, let's say, politicians in their family. I have seen it 100%. I've seen what they do to people. It's not just in the entertainment industry. And it's not just.
Sorry, what was the island? I was going to say, because I grew up on the Isle of Wight, and that's full of Freemasonic lodges as well.
I grew up in Mallorca.
Oh, okay. Okay, slightly better weather than me then, to be fair.
Yes.
But there must be an island connection then. It must be a thing. I'm sure, islands are a powerful place for a reason, and they would want to be there for a reason.
Well, everybody moves to the island to get away from something to hide. It's like my grandparents, when they went to Joshua Tree Desert, a lot of people from Hollywood would move to the desert so that they could hide and do whatever they wanted to do. So yeah, Mallorca is a very magical place. It has a very strong, powerful spiritual energy. And where there's magical spiritual energy, it attracts a lot of very bad people because they feel it. They want to be there. It also attracts very good people. So you get this mixed bag of very terrible people and very good people all living side by side. And unfortunately, those good people can be drawn in the crosshairs of badness, which is what I've seen growing up. Seen a lot of it.
So you mentioned then the Joshua Tree, and I'm just thinking of U2 and that album. What are your thoughts on Bono? Because he's one of those that you talk about obviously the politicians babbling, and then you talk about the musicians, and he's sort of half and half, isn't he, Bono? He's kind of like half a musician, half a politician, essentially. Have you ever had any? Yeah, have you ever had any dealings with him?
No, my mother's met him. She thinks he's an asshole. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, I agree, and I've never met him.
Yeah, yeah. No, she doesn't like him. I don't know. He seems like a very strange person, a very weird person. It's almost like he doesn't have any soul when you look at him.
No, no.
Some people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I wonder if that's what the glasses are about. Like, he's always wearing sunglasses indoors, which he took about 30 years to say was something to do with an eye problem. But I'm thinking, but then the eyes are the gateway to the soul at the same time. And suddenly I can't quite connect, with that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had experiences, with other kids, essentially, of celebrities, of musicians, as yourself, where you've had a conversation and said, well, I grew up here and you grew up there, and actually your experiences are similar?
I've had conversations with a few kids, but not necessarily entertainment kids. As I said, I grew up in Mallorca, and it's full of power. And wherever there is power, you have these systems of control. And so a kid who grows up with a family who has a military officer, or a family who has a politician, or a family who has a gangster, or a family who has a singer, we all have very similar lives.
That's really interesting. But then I suppose they like you mentioned earlier, that they all intertwine, and actually they're not necessarily exclusive. It's one big thing, isn't it? And I think you find that as well with a lot of musicians. They tend to be surrounded by gangsters. I'm thinking now of obviously the Krays, the very famous ones here in England. They were surrounded by musicians and actresses and actors and stuff. It's almost like they're all there together. In terms of the Freemasonry, though, because I've always found this interesting, because I've met a few Freemasons in my life, all, claim to be low level, and almost plead a bit of ignorance in terms of what goes on above them, claiming a lot of the time that they're just conspiracy theories. Do you think that most Freemasons are a little bit more aware than they'd let on, or actually some of them are genuinely just, well, it's good for business, I don't
Well,
get
it
involved?
depends on what country you're in. For example, in the United States, anyone can be a Freemason. They have lodges everywhere, and it's more like a community thing.
Right.
And I think that if in that context, if one of the local Freemasons who has a normal life, a normal family, is utilized for some specific purpose, they might not even realize that they're a part of something. They might be asked a favor to go somewhere and say something or suggest something to somebody, and they might not realize that they're being utilized by a grander network, and they might think nothing of it, really, just another day. But then, of course, in other countries, Freemasonry is exclusively for rich and powerful people. And I would say that those ones are definitely more likely to have some kind of knowledge of the nefariousness that goes on. Because it's basically, most people, they get involved in it because they know that it's a fraternity of favors, and that you can go places, you can go places and attain more power and influence. And then, of course, there's people who are genuinely interested in the ancient mystery schools and learning mysticism and learning about magic, and they want to understand the how the universe was formed and what our purpose is here on Earth, and how to understand God and all of that stuff. And I study a lot of the esoteric work and occult knowledge that the Freemasons study. And it's all very, very fascinating, very interesting, and very beautiful stuff. But, when there's these concentrations of power, and you have this vast network, which is what Freemasonry is, it's a vast network of individuals, you have access to like an unending power. You have access to this network. You can have someone across the world help you with this thing or that thing. So
Yeah, I guess it's also what you do with that information, or why you're seeking it. I guess like you can have a beautiful flower and you can use that to heal people, or you can use it to poison people. It's not necessarily the flower that's the problem, it's the motives that you're going in with. And I know a guy called Guy Anderson, which I've interviewed, he's a really nice guy. He joined the Freemasons for that reason. They kicked him out in the end when they realised what he was up to, but was to just try and get as much knowledge as he could, and he told me a few things that he managed to get a bit of knowledge, but probably not as much as he'd liked, because like I say, they kicked him out. But what would you say to people, that are watching this, that they're probably new to this information for a start, and they're thinking, okay, well, every time I turn on a film or every time I turn on, the radio, there's these mind control people basically trying to, get to me. How can I protect myself from that? How can I be aware that I'm being manipulated so I can almost put a block up?
Well, just learn the basic tactics and methods that they use. Understand the direction that they want to go in, and if you have that level of awareness, you're already okay. It's awareness. Awareness is the thing that disintegrates and dissolves all of these spells. So,
how do you enjoy, because the reason I asked this, I grew up being massively into football, loved football. Then football became really woke, really politicized and all this, and I went off it. I'll be honest with you, I couldn't be bothered with it anymore. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of watch films, listen to music, and try and separate that? Yeah, I understand that this is, got this nefarious stuff going on behind it, but at the same time, I kind of want to watch Lord of the Rings.
Well, I mean, there are some things that maybe just don't watch and don't listen to, like some new artists that literally just sing and rap about absolute shit. But if there's someone or something that has some kind of value to you, like the Lord of the Rings, if it has value to you, this new Lord of the Rings series where you get to see people dressed up as elves and that's magical and fantastical to you, just enjoy it for what it is. Because I completely understand what you're saying. A lot of films that I watch, I notice a lot of propaganda, not just propaganda. I notice things that most people don't notice, which is the pedophilia suggestions that are in so many films, so many. And it's so subtle, but at the same time so obvious. If you know what to look for, you can see it, you can hear it, and it's disgusting. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm not going to stop watching movies.
No, that's what I was getting. Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Because there's a lot of people that they're kind of like, I don't want to know because that's my favorite singer. Don't tell me. Did you see stuff? Because I'm the same as you. I see propaganda in films, and I say, oh, here we go. Like I watched a film the other day. It was on in the background, and it was set in about 20 years' time, and they were flying, and I noticed as they flew over San Francisco, it was all underwater. The Golden Gate Bridge, everything was underwater, and it's like, okay, it was really subtle because it was never, they didn't mention it. But I was like, oh, here we go, it's a climate change thing, right, okay. So I spot that. But then there's other times I watch films, like I did recently, where I think, I wonder if someone's trying to tell us something. Like they're not putting it in there as a from a dark place, but
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of filmmakers and directors and writers and things like that who want to tell you, and the agencies who are basically in charge of everything, they allow it to go forward because they also want to tell you. And there'll be a small percentage of people who will understand and a large percentage of people who don't. And unfortunately, that's just the way things are. And there's not much we can do about it. And the thing for me in the last couple of years is learning how to accept the darkness and accept that we are here in this situation and that there will always be some kind of battle between good and evil.
I wonder if those directors that allow it, because like you said, there'd be some that are trying to share it, get it out there, try and wake some people up as subtly as they can.
Yeah.
And then others are almost like, I guess they're like a serial killer who turns up at the police press conference and stands at the background. Like they kind of don't want to get caught, but they kind of do want to, they kind of do want people to know.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. You have those two different characters or three different characters, those different mindsets. There are people that genuinely want to expose things, and then there are people who get a kick out of it, and then there are the people who benefit from the revelation of the method. So,
Of course. Well, where can people find you? Because obviously, you've come on here, but you've got so much more to say. And actually, if you'd be up for it, I'd love to speak to you again in the
Yeah.
future and go into maybe some different areas. But where can people that have watched this and that are like, Coco's fascinating, I wanna learn more, where can they find you?
I actually am starting a podcast that will be based on exploring esoteric and occult knowledge, called Tracing the Circle. And I only have an Instagram page now and a Facebook page on it. That's it, really. Tracing the Circle with Coco Sianne Ryder. And I did actually, this is not my first podcast. I did a very small one a couple of months ago to kind of even see if I was even capable of doing this. I did an episode with Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast, and they have like a few hundred followers. And it was very beneficial and useful for me, and they made me feel really comfortable because I actually, I've been holding all of this stuff inside me for the last 12 years. And I haven't told my friends, I haven't told my family. I don't really share it because I thought that I was protecting people. I actually don't know how in the last few months I've decided to share anything. I don't know what's going on inside me. It's like I'm letting go of all of the fear that I had and accepting that maybe if I lose my life, if anyone loses their life, or if anything happens, if anything bad happens, it's all an illusion anyway. And the only thing that matters is the accumulation of knowledge so that our soul can do its job, which is evolve and help humanity evolve. So, yeah, it's not easy talking about these things. And I've hardly even really said anything to you that would be compromising to me. We haven't gone into any rabbit holes there. But it's still, I feel very nervous and I'm shaky just talking about these things openly. So this is a new journey for me.
I think you've spoken brilliantly. And I think, because it is a new journey for you, you'll probably find that actually you'll grow into it even more and find, your voice in a different way or whatever, the more you do, podcasts and things like that. But I've loved talking to you, and I'm sure people find it fascinating, which is why obviously I've asked for, a connection to you, because I know people are going to want to hear more from you. And like I say, I'd love to speak to you again, maybe, sit down and maybe find a specific area and just go, right, let's just go for an hour and just go, solely on that. Yeah. But I think, do you think as well, just finally, I'll get your opinion on this, because a lot of people talk about the awakening, and I hear that term used all the time. Oh yeah, the awakening, there's the Great Awakening, and it's kind of like, okay, but what does that mean? Because it's very vague, isn't it? Does it mean you're waking up to the corruption of politicians and the military-industrial complex, or does it mean you're, waking up to your true self, your connection to spirit, or whatever? It could mean so many things. What do you think the awakening is? Because there's certainly something going on, isn't there?
Well, I've noticed that people of all ages right now that I've spoken to seem to all be going through the same phenomena. My grandmother, who's in her 80s, a friend of mine who's in her 50s, me, I'm 30, and not talking about anything to do with the system or society or anything like that. They're telling me things about how they're going through these new internal they're going through these internal realizations about themselves and how they can perceive the world around them and perceive life, and how they're coming with more acceptance and peace and strength. And a lot of people seem to be going through this in completely different ways, that the context is about their life and their family. So that's a sign that there's some kind of frequency that's come over the world, where people are going through various internal transformations. So I think at the most real, at the core level of the so-called awakening, could have something to do with that. When it comes to, waking up to corruption in society and stuff like that. You had all of the hippies talking about the age of Aquarius and how, we're going to have this big wave of realization and things are going to be great. I don't think it's going to be great. Aquarius is associated with Saturn, which is associated with Satan. I don't think it's going to be great. I think that the human race is going to go through probably centuries of very severe karmic purging, and it's going to be fucking terrible. But I think that these cycles of pain are part of our purpose here on this earth, which is to learn as much as possible. Because I don't think that this earth is it. I think that our souls go on and that we have more to do once we leave this planet. And I think that we return to this planet a lot because we haven't finished learning the lessons that we need to learn. So I'm not sure about awakening in the sense that things are going to get so much better, but perhaps more people are going to try and work towards something that will help themselves and the people around them and the world at large. But the struggle is going to go on.
Yeah.
We're not going to...
I think the more it goes on, the more people wake up to it as well, though. It's like this balancing act, isn't it, of wanting to keep people almost in servitude, but the worse you make it for them, the more likely they are to go, hang on a minute, and actually, open their eyes to stuff. Exactly. I think as well that acceptance that this isn't it is happening within lots and lots of people. And, people can believe different things, whatever. But once you realize that this isn't it, you lose that fear, don't you? A bit of that kind of, that fear, I guess, of it's all over and I'm worm food is all of a sudden, well, no, I'm going off somewhere else and I'll do something else. And that's quite powerful, I think.
Yeah. And it's also... I'm on the phone, so I keep getting calls. I think I have to...
Oh, you're too popular, mate. That's what it is.
It's not my phone. It's my partner's phone. What was I going to say? What were you saying? I've lost...
The fact that it's an absence of fear. Once you get to a point where you're like, well, yeah, there is more.
Okay.
There's more
what
to
I was
this journey.
Going to say was, in the movies, when you see the hero lose all his powers and he's just about to die and you think it's the end and he feels like he's lost everything. And then at a certain point, he regains his powers again. Well, that's kind of what I've been through in the last... I've lost so much of my power, and I went through a stage of hopelessness, and I thought it was kind of the end for me. But I'm realizing that this is just a passage that I've been through, this sort of fall, this sort of losing one sense of reality and going through all of these different struggles, and that this is all just part of a learning process so that I can let go of fear and so that I can feel like, well, for example, the reason why I wasn't talking about this stuff is because I wanted to protect people, or I wanted to protect myself, or I was afraid. And now, after I've lost so much because of these people in the last 5 years and lost so much of my life because of these people in the last 12 years, I finally realized, what, fuck it. Take things a little less seriously and just go ahead and be yourself, be as true as you possibly can. And I wouldn't have got to this point if it hadn't have gotten so bad, And now I'm just a little bit more accepting and peaceful about everything.
Yeah, I think I stand by that no is the most powerful word in the English language, but maybe the most powerful too is fuck it. As you say, sometimes we just get to that point, don't we? Just fuck it.
Fuck it.
Fuck
yeah.
it. That's it. And get that on a T-shirt. Coco, I've loved talking to you, mate. It's been wonderful, and I'd love to talk to you again. So we'll keep in touch if that's okay with you.
That would be awesome. Cool.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
That was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that and got something from that. I'm absolutely sure you did. And I'll see you again next week. Good night.